My mom called me selfish at Christmas dinner in front of my husband and my in-laws and my two kids who were 8 and 5 and who were sitting at the table eating mashed potatoes and heard every word. She called me selfish because I had told her in October, 2 months before, that we would be spending Christmas morning at our own house this year for the first time and then driving to her house for the afternoon. We had done Christmas morning at her house every single year for 8 years. We had done it at her house even the Christmas my son had been 4 months old and had needed to be fed every 2 hours, and I had sat in her guest bedroom at 6 in the morning feeding him while the family waited for me to come down so they could open gifts. I had said, "This year the kids will open gifts in their own house on Christmas morning. We will be there by noon." My mother had been planning Christmas for 2 months, as though that conversation had not happened. I am a dental office manager. I want to say something about what the 7 years of office management had given me as a way of reading the situation my mother had created, and about the specific framework that had allowed me to see it clearly without becoming overwhelmed by it. In a dental office, you encounter a specific kind of communication failure regularly. The patient who has been told what to expect, and who has said they understand, and who has then arrived expecting something different. This is not deception in most cases. It is the specific human tendency to hear what you want to hear when the alternative is to hear something that requires adjustment. The mind protects the plan it has already made. The plan exists in detail, and the detail has emotional weight, and the incoming information that conflicts with the plan is filtered through the weight of the plan rather than received on its own terms. My mother had a plan. The plan was Christmas morning. The plan had the weight of 8 years of doing it the same way. My October conversation had been incoming information that conflicted with the plan. Her, of course, had been her mind protecting the plan. I had known this because I had watched it happen in the waiting room many times. Knowing it did not make it easier. It made it legible. The difference between legible and easy is significant, and the 7 years had given me the legibility. I had known what I was dealing with. I had dealt with it at the dinner table with the same tools I used with the patients in the waiting room. Clarity, calm, accurate language, no raised voice. The dinner table is just a waiting room with turkey. I also want to say something about what the dental office specifically had taught me about the conversation that had been happening under the surface of the Christmas planning, and about why the surface conversation and the undersurface conversation had needed to be addressed at different moments and in different ways. In a dental office, you learn to distinguish between the presenting problem and the actual problem. A patient who presents with tooth sensitivity may have a cracked tooth, or a receding gum line, or a grinding habit, or an anxiety about dental work that has produced years of avoidance that has produced the sensitivity. The sensitivity is real. The sensitivity is also a symptom of something else. You address the symptom, and you also look for the thing the symptom is indicating. My mother's behavior about Christmas had been a symptom. The symptom was, she keeps planning as though the conversation has not happened. The thing the symptom had been indicating was what she had told me in January. The grief, the held-on-to version of a Christmas that had ended, the not knowing how to ask. At the dinner table, I had addressed the symptom because the dinner table had been the right context for the symptom. The January call had addressed the thing beneath the symptom because the quiet kitchen on a Tuesday morning had been the right context for the depth. Right tool, right context. 7 years of dental office management had given me the framework. The tooth sensitivity is real. Look for what is behind it. The presenting problem at the dinner table had been my mother narrating a Christmas morning she had not attended, as though she had attended it. I had addressed the presenting problem by correcting the record. The actual problem beneath it had been addressed in January in a kitchen on a Tuesday morning when there had been space and time and nobody else at the table. The right intervention at the right moment in the right context. This is the whole of the dental office management framework applied to something that had nothing to do with teeth, and everything to do with care. The symptom had been addressed at the table. The root had been addressed in January. Both had been necessary. The table without January would have produced a corrected record and an unresolved relationship. January without the table would not have happened because the table had made the conversation necessary and real in a way that the prior phone calls had not. The table had been the catalyst for January. The table had been the consequence that had made the conversation land. Both had been required. Managed a dental practice in Denver for 7 years, and the specific work of managing a dental office is the work of managing expectations. Patients arrive with a fear or a hope or a specific anxiety about what is going to happen to them in the chair, and part of my job is to ensure that the reality of their visit matches as closely as possible with what they have been told to expect. When the expectation and the reality diverge badly, patients become difficult in the specific way that people become difficult when they feel they have been misled. They do not direct the difficulty at the thing that is causing it. They direct it at the nearest available person. I had managed this for 7 years. I had become very good at identifying the moment when expectation and reality were beginning to diverge and at intervening before the difficulty materialized. I had seen the Christmas divergence. I want to describe the October conversation in more detail, and about what I had said and how I had said it, and what she had said back, and what I had understood in real time about the distance between her words and her intentions. I had called her on a Saturday morning in early October, when I had had the kitchen to myself, and the kids had been in the backyard with Derek. I had made the call deliberately, at a time when I had been calm and prepared, because I had known from 7 years of office management that the most important conversations should not be had when you are at the end of your patience, but rather at the beginning of a calm Saturday morning with a cup of coffee, and the backyard visible through the kitchen window. I had said, "Mom, I want to tell you something about Christmas this year that I want to make sure we are aligned on early." I had used the word aligned specifically because it was a word from my work vocabulary and because it implied a shared goal rather than a directive. I had said, "This year we are going to do Christmas morning at our house for the first time. The kids will open their gifts here. We will drive to you by noon, and we will be there for the whole day." She had said, "Of course. I completely understand." I had noted the speed of the response. In my experience, when someone says of course very quickly about something that represents a change from a long pattern, they have not fully processed the change. They have heard the words and their immediate response mechanism has produced acceptance before the implications have arrived. I had filed this. I had called again on December 20th. I had said, "Mom, I want to confirm Christmas morning will be at our house." She had said, "Of course." Completely. She had ordered a turkey the following day. I also want to say something about the specific emotional experience of saying the same clear thing twice, and receiving the same of course both times, and the knowledge between the second of course and Christmas morning that the of course had not been the thing it had sounded like. This experience is specific and strange. You have done the right thing. You have communicated clearly. You have done it twice. You have received acknowledgement twice. And you are standing in the knowledge that the acknowledgement has not produced the alignment the acknowledgement implied. This is not an unusual experience in close family relationships, and it is one of the more disorienting ones because it removes the option of simply saying the thing more clearly as the solution. You have said it clearly. The clarity has not been the missing element. The missing element has been the willingness on the other end to receive the information as information rather than as a threat to a plan that has the weight of 8 years behind it. I had understood this by December 21st when I had learned about the turkey. I had known then that the conversation was not going to be resolved in advance. It was going to be resolved at the table. I had prepared for the table. The preparation had not been elaborate. It had been the same preparation I used for difficult patient conversations. Know what you need to say it clearly, do not escalate, return to ordinary life afterward. The fork. The dessert. Return to ordinary life. The table had been the place where the expectation and the reality were going to diverge visibly, and I had known this since December 21st. In the dental office, when you know a difficult conversation is coming, you do not try to prevent it. You prepare for it. You decide what you are going to say and how you are going to say it, and what you are going to do when you are done saying it. I had decided all three. I had said what I had needed to say. I had said it in a way that did not escalate. I had returned to dessert. This is the whole of the preparation. Know what you need to say. Say it without escalating. Return to the meal. She had ordered the turkey on December 22nd. I had found this out from my sister, who had been at my mother's house that day. The turkey had confirmed what I had suspected since the second of course. The planning had continued as though the conversations had not happened. I had told Derek about the turkey. He had said, "Okay, we know what we're dealing with. We do Christmas morning in our house as planned. We drive there at noon. When things come up at the table, we address them." He had said this with the same calm that he uses for everything that requires it. I had said, yes. We had done exactly this. Coming in October when I had told her. I had used very clear language. I had said, "Mom, this year we are going to do Christmas morning at our house. We will be there by noon." She had said, "Of course, I understand completely." She had then proceeded to plan Christmas morning at her house, as though the conversation had not happened. Before I go on, if this story I want to say something about Denver and about what having been here for 11 years has meant, and about what it means to have built a life in a place that was not where I grew up, and that has become mine in the specific way that a place you have chosen becomes yours. I grew up outside of Columbus, Ohio. My mother is still there. I had come to Denver for a job and had met Derek and had stayed because the job had become a career and Derek had become my husband and Denver had become the place where my children were born and where they went to school and where Christmas morning now happened in our house in a neighborhood that had been ours for 6 years. The house has a specific layout that my children know completely. The living room where the tree goes every December, the landing at the top of the stairs where they stand on Christmas morning before coming down, the kitchen where I make coffee and Derek makes whatever breakfast he has decided to make that year. This is their Christmas. This geography. These stairs. This landing. The tree in the specific corner of the living room where it has been every year since we moved in. My mother's house outside Columbus is also a real place that they love and that they will spend Christmas afternoon in for many years. It is a different place than their house. Their house is their house. Denver gave me the house. The house gave my children the landing at the top of the stairs. That landing is what Christmas morning is. It took 8 years to get them to that landing. They're on it now. They will be on it every year. Denver is their city. The landing is their landing. I also want to say something about what Denver has looked like to my children as the place they are growing up in, and about what I hope they will carry from it. Denver is a city at altitude with a quality of light that is specific to high places. Brighter and more direct than the diffuse light of sea-level cities. My children have grown up in that light. They are being shaped by it, without knowing they are being shaped by it the way children are shaped by the specific quality of the light, and the weather, and the elevation of the place they grow up in. My son knows the mountains are west without being told, because the mountains have been to his west since he was born. My daughter knows snow as a natural condition of December, rather than as a weather event to be celebrated. These are the specific Denver things they have. Christmas morning in their Denver house is the most specific Denver thing they have. The tree in the corner of the living room with the Colorado light on it at 5:45 in the morning. The landing. The half-whisper, half-shout. The stairs they know in their specific bodies because they have been running down them since they could run. This is theirs. Denver gave it to them. I protected it. The protecting had required the table conversation and the January call. The tree in the Denver light at 5:45 had been worth both of those things. Denver is home because I chose it, and because Derek chose it, and because together we have made it into the specific geography of a shared life. The house with the landing is part of that geography. The tree in the corner of the living room is part of it. The dental office 7 years into a career I believe in is part of it. My children are Denver children in the specific way that children become the place they grow up in. They know the altitude. They know the light. They know the mountains are west. They know their landing. Their landing is their Denver. I gave them that. The kids will grow up in Denver, and they will carry Denver into their adult lives the way you carry the specific character of the place you grew up in. They will know what it means to be at altitude. They will know the December light. They will know the landing at the top of the stairs and the tree in the corner, and the Christmas mornings that belong to them in their own house. This is what I am giving them by staying in Denver, and by protecting the specific geography of their childhood. The landing is the geography. I protected it. It is theirs. My children are Denver children. The landing is their landing. Denver gave it to them. I protected it. The protecting had required 3 difficult conversations. The landing was worth all 3. It will be worth every one that comes after. Connects with something real in your life. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely feel it. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. My name is Ashley. I am 37 years old. And this is the story of what I said back to my mother at the Christmas dinner table and about the conversation we had in January that changed something between us permanently in the best possible way. Now let me explain what the 8 I want to say something about Derek and about what being married to a history teacher has given me as a way of understanding the long sequences that produce difficult present situations. Derek teaches history to 15-year-olds, and the specific discipline of teaching history to 15-year-olds is the discipline of making past events legible to people who have not lived them and whose lives are full of present concerns that feel more urgent. You cannot teach history by presenting events. You have to teach it by presenting the logic of decisions made by people who were trying to solve problems with the information and resources they had. Derek applies this to everything. He had applied it to my mother. He had said, "She is doing this because this is what has worked for her for 8 years. She has a pattern, and the pattern has a history, and the history has an emotional logic. The thing you are asking her to change is not just Christmas morning. It is what Christmas morning means to her and what it has meant for 8 years." He had said this not as a defense of her behavior but as a map of it. Here is the territory, here are the features, here is why the territory looks the way it looks. A map is not a permission slip. It is a map. The January conversation with my mother had been made possible because Derek had given me the map early. I had gone into the conversation knowing the territory. I had not been surprised by what she had said because the map had included it. He has been giving me maps for 11 years. It is one of the things I am most grateful for. I also want to say something about what the history teacher framework had meant in the practical sense of how Derek and I had made decisions together about how to handle the situation. He had given me the map. I had taken the map and had made the decisions. This is how we work together on the hard things. He provides the historical context and the analytical frame, and I make the operational call. It had not always been this clean. In the early years of our marriage, I had sometimes found the historical context unhelpful when I was looking for validation rather than analysis. I had learned, over 11 years, that the historical context was more useful than the validation, even when it was less satisfying in the immediate moment. The map lets you navigate. The validation only confirms that the territory is difficult. You already know the territory is difficult. What you need is the map. He had given me the map in early December. I had used the map at the table and in January. The territory had been difficult. The map had made it navigable. We had navigated it. The thing on the other side of the navigation is better than what was on the near side. A good map is worth having. He is still giving me maps. I am still using them. He is still giving me maps. I am still using them. The map for the January call had included the grief she had been carrying. I had arrived at the call with the map, and I had been able to hear her grief when she had named it. The map had prepared me to receive something unexpected. She had said I know it was for me. I had been able to receive it because I had been expecting the territory the map had described. This is what good preparation produces: the capacity to receive the unexpected. The historical framework had also helped me understand what the January call was for. It was not for resolving the past. It was not for assigning fault or revisiting the 8 years in search of a verdict. It was for establishing what the next years would look like based on an accurate understanding of what the current situation actually was. She had known the mornings were for her. I had known I needed my children to have their mornings. We had named both of these things. The naming had produced the agreement. The agreement had produced the afternoon visits. The afternoon visits are working. Years of Christmas mornings at her house had contained, and why the 8th year had been the year the conversation had to happen. The specific thing that had built in me over 8 years was not resentment of my mother, who I love and who has many qualities I genuinely admire. It was something more specific, a growing understanding that the Christmas morning she was producing was for her and not for my children. She is an excellent host. She produces an excellent Christmas. The house is decorated with a precision that I recognize as the expression of genuine love for the holiday. She bakes. She wraps gifts with specific care. She creates an atmosphere that is genuinely impressive. What the atmosphere did not contain was the particular chaos of 2 children in their own house on Christmas morning, surrounded by their own things in the space where they lived, opening gifts that Santa had left, running in their pajamas to the living room. My children had never experienced Christmas morning in their own house. They had experienced Christmas morning at their grandmother's house, beautifully orchestrated by their grandmother, in a way that had been lovely, and that had not been theirs. My son had asked me in November, when I want to say something about my son specifically, and about the question he had asked in November, and about why his question had been the thing that had made the year. My son is a child who takes things seriously. He has always taken things seriously. When he was 4, he had wanted to understand why the stoplight was red before it turned green, and the answer traffic flow had not satisfied him because he had wanted to understand the deeper logic. I had explained traffic flow at a level of detail that was unusual for a 4-year-old, and he had nodded the specific nod of a child who has received the answer and found it adequate. He takes things seriously. The question about Santa had been a question about something he had been noticing for years, and had finally organized into a sentence. He had been asking, "Does our house count? Is our house the place where the important things happen? Or is that somewhere else?" I had heard the real question below the Santa question. He had wanted to know if home was home in the full sense of the word. Not just the place they slept, the place where Christmas happened, the place where Santa came. I had said, "Santa always knows where you live. And this year you will be at home on Christmas morning." He had nodded the specific nod. He had gone back to whatever he had been doing. I had sat for a moment with the specific weight of having given the right answer to the right question. He had asked because he had needed to know. I had told him the truth. The truth had been that this year he would be at home. I had needed to make that true. I had made it true. I also want to say something about what my son's question about Santa had revealed about the specific gap between the Christmas my children had been having and the Christmas they had needed. My son is the kind of child who articulates things that have been accumulating. He does not raise small questions. When he asks a question, it is because the question has been organizing itself in him for some time and has reached the point where it requires an external answer. The Santa question had been organizing in him for years. Not since November. Since every Christmas morning that had been at my mother's house. He had been noticing, at whatever level an 8-year-old notices things, that Christmas morning was somewhere else. That home was where they slept and where they did homework and where ordinary days happened, and that the important day of the year happened somewhere else. He had not had the framework to articulate this until he had found the Santa vehicle for it. Does Santa know we're going to Grandma's? The question had been, is our house where the important things happen? I had understood the real question because the pediatric nursing side of my family had been doing the same translation work for 6 years. What is the child actually asking? What he had been asking was real and important, and I had been in a position to answer it truthfully. This year you will be at home. He had nodded and gone on. He had needed the answer and I had been able to give it. Being able to give it had required the prior conversations. The prior conversations had been worth having. He is 9 now. He has had 2 Christmas mornings on the landing, and he has already incorporated them into his understanding of what Christmas morning is. The landing is Christmas morning. The half-whisper, half-shout from his sister is Christmas morning. The book under the tree is Christmas morning. He does not know that this required anything from me because he does not need to know that yet. Someday he will know. Someday he will understand what the October call and the December 20th call and the turkey and the dinner table had produced. He will understand it when he has his own children asking their own questions about Santa. The question about Santa had been organizing in him since the first Christmas morning he had been old enough to understand what Christmas morning was. He had been noticing for years. He had finally found the words. I had heard the real question, and I had answered it truthfully. This year you will be at home. He had needed this answer. I had been in a position to give it because I had done the work to be in that position. The October call and the December call and the turkey knowledge and the dinner table that was coming had all been the work that had allowed me to give him the true answer. He had asked. I had answered. He had nodded and gone on. This is how it is supposed to work. He is 9 now, and he already takes the landing for granted in the best possible way. He takes it for granted because it is his, and it has always been his for 2 Christmases, which is most of what he remembers of being old enough to understand what Christmas morning is. The landing is given. I made it given. This is what I wanted. This is exactly what I wanted. He was 8 and was old enough to ask specific questions. Mom, does Santa know we're going to Grandma's? Because he might get confused. I had looked at my son asking whether Santa would know where to find him on Christmas morning, and I had thought, that is the year. This is the year we do it in our own house. I want to say something before I go. I want to say something about my mother-in-law, and about the specific expression she had given me across the table, and about what that expression had contained. Her name is Patricia. She is a woman who has raised 3 children, and who has been a grandmother for 6 years, and who understands, from the specific vantage point of a woman who has been on both sides of the table, what is at stake in the negotiation between a mother and her adult daughter over the geography of the holidays. She had looked at me across the turkey and the mashed potatoes with an expression that had communicated several things simultaneously. She had understood what was happening. She was not going to intervene. She was watching to see how I handled it, and she was on my side in the specific quiet way of a woman who has learned that being on someone's side is not the same as saying so out loud. After the dinner had continued and the conversation had moved on, Patricia had come to stand beside me in the kitchen while I had been clearing plates, and she had said nothing for a moment, and then had said, You handled that well. 4 words. No elaboration. She had picked up a dish towel and had begun drying the glasses I had been washing. The conversation had ended with the 4 words. This is what the right person at the right moment does. They say the accurate thing in the minimum number of words, and they pick up the dish towel. Patricia had been beside me in the kitchen with the dish towel. I have not forgotten those 4 words. You handled that well. It had been enough. It had been exactly enough. I also want to say something about the 8 beautiful Christmas mornings my mother had produced, and about what I want my children to understand about them someday. They had been real. The decorations had been real, and the baking had been real, and the love that had gone into the production of those mornings had been completely real. My mother had been doing the thing she had done because she had loved us, and because she had loved Christmas, and because she had believed, in a way that had not been examined carefully enough by either of us for 8 years, that the Christmas morning she produced was the Christmas morning we needed. She had not been wrong that we had needed her love. She had been wrong about which form of her love was most needed at this stage. The stage had changed. The form had not. This is the gap that had produced 8 years of an arrangement that had been working for one person more than it had been working for the others. I want my children to understand someday that their grandmother loved those Christmas mornings because she loved them, and that the love was the true thing, and that the form was what had needed to change. The love has not changed. She is at our house every Christmas afternoon. She sees the living room with the wrapping paper still on the floor. She sees my daughter running with her new thing. She sees my son at the table with his book. She is still the grandmother. She is just the grandmother who comes in the afternoon now. The afternoon is hers. The morning is theirs. The love runs through both. She sees everything that matters. This is what the January call had done. It had created the conditions for her to see everything that matters. She had been coming in the afternoon for 2 years, and she has not missed a single thing that has mattered. She has seen my daughter run with her new things. She has seen my son look up from his book to tell her something he has been thinking about. She has sat in the living room with the wrapping paper on the floor, and the tree lit, and the children around her. The love that produced 8 Christmas mornings is still there. It is present in the afternoon in the same complete way it was present in the morning. She has everything she needed. We all do. She brings Grandma's thing every Christmas afternoon now. My daughter begins asking about Grandma's thing approximately 10 days before Christmas. My son asks more subtly, but with equal anticipation. The thing is one of the real continuities across the changed arrangement. The dessert that has been made the same way for 30 years arriving in the afternoon in the house with the wrapping paper still on the floor. Some things should not change. The thing should not change. It has not changed. It arrives in the afternoon. This is exactly right. About my husband, and about what the 8 years had been like from his perspective, and about the specific conversation we had had in early December when we had understood that my mother had not adjusted her plans. His name is Derek. He is a high school history teacher, and he approaches things the way a history teacher approaches things. With context and with the specific understanding that the present situation is the product of a long sequence of prior decisions, each of which had seemed reasonable at the time, and which had together produced a situation that required examining rather than simply managing. He had said, "She planned it this way because she is used to planning it this way, and because planning it this way makes her feel like the center of the thing." He had said this without judgment. He had said, "The conversation you had with her in October was real, and her planning, as though it had not happened, is also real. Both are real at the same time. The question is what we're going to do on Christmas morning." I had said, "We are going to be in our house on Christmas morning." He had said, "Then we should tell her that again clearly before Christmas Eve." We had told her again on December 20th. She had said, "Of course, I understand completely." She had ordered a turkey. Thank you for staying until the end. I want to end with something about the January phone call, and about what it had permanently changed, and about why the changed thing is better than what had been there before. My mother and I had arrived in that phone call at an honest description of what had been happening between us for 8 years. She had been holding on to Christmas morning because she had loved what Christmas morning had been when I was a child, and had not known how to ask directly for something that honored both the past and the present. I had been failing to have the full version of the conversation for 8 years because conflict with my mother carries a specific cost that I had been unwilling to pay until my son had asked about Santa and had shown me the cost of not paying it. We had both been managing something we had not named, and the thing we had not named had produced 8 years of Christmas mornings that had been hers rather than ours. The naming had been the January call. The naming had cost one difficult dinner and one 40-minute phone call, and it had produced something that the 8 years of management had not produced: an actual agreement. An agreement that had been based on what was real for both of us rather than on what we had each been pretending was fine. She comes to us on Christmas afternoon now. She stays for dinner. She sees the living room after the gifts have been opened, and the wrapping paper is still on the floor, and the children are already playing with the new things. She is part of the Christmas. She is just not the center of it anymore. My children are the center of it. In their house. On their landing. This is what the January call bought. It was a good investment. 40 minutes well spent. I also want to end with something about this Christmas, 2 years after the dinner table conversation, and about what is different and what is the same. My mother comes on Christmas afternoon. She brings the thing she always brings, which is a dessert she has been making at Christmas for 30 years, and that my children have named simply Grandma's thing because they do not know its official name and do not need to. She arrives to a living room where the wrapping paper has been partially cleared, and the new things are being used already, and the tree is still lit, and the house smells like whatever Derek made for breakfast. She is part of this. She has adjusted, and she has been present in the adjusted form, and the adjusted form works. My son hugs her when she comes in and shows her whatever he is currently working on or reading. My daughter runs to her the way she runs everywhere. My mother sits in the living room that is theirs, and she watches her grandchildren be exactly who they are in the space where they are exactly themselves. She said to me last Christmas, when my daughter had been explaining something at high speed and volume, that she had been worried she would miss too much by coming in the afternoon. She had said, "I don't miss anything. I see everything that matters." I had said, yes. I had meant it. She sees everything that matters. The January call had given her that. It had given us all that. It was 40 minutes very well spent. She sees everything that matters. The afternoon is hers. The morning was theirs. Both are real. Both are full. The afternoon visits are what they were always supposed to be. A grandmother who loves her grandchildren being present in the house where her grandchildren live and watching them be exactly who they are. The morning had never been the right form for this. The afternoon is the right form. The wrapping paper on the floor is the right form. The running and the books and the grandma's thing on the counter are the right form. It took 8 years and one difficult dinner and one 40-minute phone call to find the right form. The right form was worth finding. We found it. It is ours now. All of it. The morning. The afternoon. The landing. The love. All of it is ours. The 40 minutes in January had been the most important 40 minutes of the 8-year situation. Not because they had been dramatic. Because they had been honest. She had said the true thing about herself. I had said the true thing about what I needed. We had arrived at the actual territory instead of continuing to manage the map of what we had each been pretending was fine. The actual territory had been navigable. We had navigated it. The navigation continues. She comes in the afternoon. She sees everything that matters. 40 minutes very well spent. If this story made you feel something, write it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to hear the full story of what I said back at the Christmas dinner table, and what happened in the car on the drive home, and what I said to my mother in January that she did not expect, and that changed something for good, it is waiting for you in the description below. Click it. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And if there is someone in your life who consistently hears what you say and plans as though they have not heard it, I want you to know that the conversation has to be had twice, sometimes 3 times, sometimes at a dinner table in front of people you love. The 3rd time it lands. Not because you said it louder. Because the 3rd time, you let them see the consequence. The consequence is the thing that lands. I had let it land. So can you? I want to tell you more about the specific moment at the dinner table, and about what I said, and about why I said it the way I did. The moment had arrived during dessert. My mother had been telling the story of Christmas morning. How my son had reacted to a gift, how my daughter had run into the room. She had been telling it as though she had witnessed it rather than having heard it described over the phone at noon when we had called to say we were on our way. She had been telling it in the first person of someone who had been in the room. My husband's mother, who had been seated across from me, had looked at me with a specific expression that was the expression of a woman who understood exactly what was happening and who was waiting to see whether I was going to address it. I had put down my fork. I had said, "Mom, I want to clarify something, for I want to say something about my daughter, and about what her first Christmas morning at home had been like, and about the specific image from that morning that I have held most clearly." She is 5 years old. She does not have the philosophical questions her brother has about the logistics of Santa. She has complete certainty about Santa and about Christmas, and about what Christmas morning is supposed to feel like. She had woken at 5:45 and had stood at the top of the stairs on the landing, and had said her brother's name in a specific half-whisper, half-shout, that is her version of urgency. He had appeared at his door. They had both stood on the landing in their pajamas, and they had looked at each other, and then they had both looked down the stairs at the living room where the tree was lit, and the gifts were under it. They had come to get Derek and me. We had all gone down together. My daughter had run the last 3 stairs. This is what Christmas morning in your own house is. The landing at 5:45. The half-whisper, half-shout. The 2 children looking at each other on the landing before they look at the tree. My mother had produced 8 beautiful Christmas mornings. They had not contained this. They could not have contained this. This required the landing. It required their landing. I had made sure they had the landing. The 5:45 had been worth every single thing that had come after it at the dinner table. My daughter running the last 3 stairs is worth everything. It was worth it. It will always have been worth it. I also want to say something about what had happened later that same Christmas morning after the gifts had been opened, and we had been eating the breakfast Derek had made, and my daughter had been playing with the things she had asked Santa for specifically, and my son had been reading the first pages of a book he had found under the tree. He had looked up from the book and had said, "Mom." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "This is better." He had gone back to the book. 8 years old. 4 words. This is better. I had sat with those 4 words over the breakfast Derek had made, and I had thought about the October call, and the December 20th call, and the turkey and the dinner that was coming. I had thought, 4 words from an 8-year-old who says exactly what he means. This is better. The 8 previous Christmas mornings had not been bad. They had been good in many ways. This was better. Because it was theirs. Because the landing had been theirs, and the stairs had been theirs, and the tree and the Denver light had been theirs. My son had said the true thing in 4 words before going back to his book. He does this. He says the true thing and returns to what he was doing. I do not know where he learned this. I hope he learned it partly from watching me at the table. The true thing. The fork. The return to dessert. He said the true thing and returned to his book. It is possible this is mine. It is possible I gave him this. I hope so. I choose to believe so. He went back to his book and I sat with his 4 words, and with the knowledge that I had done the right thing for the right reasons, and that the cost that was coming at the dinner table that afternoon was going to be worth the landing, and the stairs, and the this is better. I had known this in the morning before the dinner. I had carried it into the dinner. The 4 words had been the foundation I had stood on when I had put down the fork. He had given them to me without knowing he was giving them to me. He is 8. He gives me things without knowing it. This is one of the gifts of children. He said the true thing. He returned to the book. I am still learning from the sequence. Say the true thing. Return to what you were doing. He had showed me this at 8 years old over Christmas morning breakfast. I had done it at the dinner table that afternoon. We had been doing the same thing on the same day, and he had not known it, and I had not told him, but I had known it, and I have held it since. The true thing. The return. Both of us. Same day. I want to say something about the drive home from Christmas, and about what Derek and I had said to each other, and about what we had said to the kids in the car. My son had been awake for the drive home. My daughter had been asleep by the time we had reached the highway. My son had said from the back seat, without any particular gravity, "Grandma called you selfish." I had said, "She did." He had said, "Were you?" I had thought about this for a moment. I had said, "No." I had said, "Do you know what selfish means?" He had said, "Only thinking about yourself." I had said, "Right. Do you think I was only thinking about myself when I said you should have Christmas morning at home?" He had thought about this for a moment in the specific way he thinks about things. He had said, "No. You were thinking about us." I had said, "Yes." I had also been thinking about what I needed. Both can be true at the same time. He had thought about this. He had said, "Okay." He had looked out the window for a while. He had said, "The landing thing this morning was really good." I had said, "It was." He had said, "I want to do that every year." I had said, "We will." He had gone quiet again. Derek had reached over from the driver's seat and had put his hand briefly on mine. The highway had gone past outside the windows. My daughter had slept. My son had looked out his window. We had driven home to the house where Christmas morning was. It was ours. It is still ours. It will be ours every year. I also want to say something about what the car ride home had given me in addition to the conversation with my son, and about the specific quality of the hour between my mother's house and our house on Christmas night. My daughter had slept the whole way with her head tilted toward the window the way she sleeps in the car, which is with absolute commitment to the sleeping. My son had been awake and had looked out his window for long stretches of the highway and had occasionally said things that came from wherever he had been in his thinking. Derek had driven. I had sat in the passenger seat and had let the highway pass and had felt the specific tiredness that comes after a day that has required a great deal of you and that has also given a great deal back. The day had started with the landing at 5:45. It had contained the breakfast and the book and the This Is Better. It had contained the drive to my mother's house and the dinner and the fork and the dessert. It had contained Patricia's 4 words and Derek's honest accounting. It had ended with my son looking out the car window on a Christmas night while his sister slept and his father drove and his mother watched Colorado go past in the dark. The tiredness had been complete. The day had also been complete. Both were true. Everything that had needed to happen had happened. The kids had had their landing. I had had my table moment. The rest was still coming. January was still coming. The highway had carried us home. The highway had carried us home. We had arrived at the house and Derek had carried my daughter in, and my son had carried his new book, and I had stood in the driveway for a moment before going in. The Colorado night had been cold and clear in the specific way of Colorado nights in December. I had looked at our house with the lights on inside, and I had thought, this is where Christmas morning is. This house. This driveway. This cold, clear night. This is where it is. I had gone inside. Derek had put the kettle on. The kids had gone to bed. The house had settled into the quiet of Christmas night. It had been ours. All of it. The kettle had boiled and Derek had made tea, and we had sat at the kitchen table for a while before going to bed. The house had been quiet in the way that a house with sleeping children is quiet, full of the specific presence of people at rest in their own space. I had thought about the October call and the table and what was coming in January. I had thought about my daughter running the last 3 stairs in the morning. Derek had said, "Good day." I had said, yes. We had meant all of it. The morning. The table. The whole of it. Good day. An accurate description. A good day. Exactly that. Good day. We had meant both things, the morning and the table. Both had been good. The morning had been the landing. The table had been the consequence that had made January possible. Both had been necessary. Both had been good. Good day. I want to say something about what I had said in those 30 seconds at the table, and about why the specific words I had chosen had been the ones I had chosen. I had not planned the speech. I had been planning it in the general sense that you plan for a possibility you know is real, and that you know will arrive in some form. The planning had been the 7 years of office work, and the October conversation, and the December 20th call, and the 3 days of knowing she had ordered a turkey. By the time I had put down my fork, I had known what I needed to accomplish. Accurate description of what had happened without accusation, without drama, without making it about my mother personally. I had framed it as a clarification for the table. I had used the word clarify twice. Clarify is not an attacking word. It is a correcting word. It implies that the record has been inaccurate, and that the inaccuracy can be addressed calmly. I had used it as a signal. I am not fighting. I am correcting. When my mother had said after everything I do for this family, I had heard beneath it the thing Derek had described. The grief for the role that had been hers, and that had been changing as her grandchildren had grown old enough to need their own landing at the top of the stairs. I had not named the grief at the table. The table was not the right place for the grief. January was the right place for the grief. I had known this in real time. I had said what could be said at the table, and had left the rest for January. The fork. The dessert. The dinner that continued. And January on the other side. I also want to say something about the conversation I had had with Derek after the dinner, and before the kids had come home from my in-laws where they had stayed overnight, and about what he had said that had stayed with me. He had said, "The thing you did at the table was necessary, and it was handled well, and I am proud of you, and I am also aware that it is a difficult thing to have to do to your own mother at Christmas dinner in front of people you love." He had said, "Both of those things are true and neither cancels the other." This is something he does that I rely on. He holds the two true things at the same time without resolving them into a single simpler thing. The thing I had done had been necessary and also had a cost. The cost had been real. I had felt it. The necessity had also been real. He had held both. He had not told me the cost was worth it. He had told me both were real. I had needed the both are real more than I would have needed the reassurance that the cost was worth it. Reassurance is easier to give and less useful to receive. The honest accounting is harder to give and more useful. He gave me the honest accounting. He always gives me the honest accounting. This is the most useful thing a partner can do in the aftermath of a hard thing. Name what it cost and name what it was. Both. At the same time. Without pretending one cancels the other. He gives me the honest accounting, and I give him the operational decisions, and together we have been navigating the difficult territory for 11 years. The system works. The Christmas table moment had been one of the times the system had been tested at a higher level than usual and had held. The system holding is not a given. It requires maintenance. We maintain it. The Christmas table had held. January had held. The afternoon visits now hold. The system is working. We maintain the system by being honest with each other about what things cost and what they are. The Christmas situation had cost something and had been something, and he had named both. I had received both. We had gone to bed on Christmas night with an accurate account of the day. Not a flattering account. An accurate one. The accurate account is the one you can sleep on. We had slept on it. January had been on the other side of the sleep. The table. I said to everyone, this Christmas, for the first time, my kids opened presents in their own house on Christmas morning. It was something Derek and I had planned since October. My mother had planned Christmas morning here as well, which is why we arrived later than some of you expected. I want to clarify this so that the story of Christmas morning is the accurate story. My mother had said, Ashley, I don't understand why you're making this into something at the dinner table. I had said, I'm not making it into something. I'm correcting a version of events that wasn't accurate. My kids had Christmas morning in their house this year. That happened. It was their first time. My mother had said, after everything I do for this family. I had said quietly, I know how much you do. This isn't about that. She had said, you are being selfish. I had not said anything for a moment. My daughter had been eating her pie. My son had been watching me with the specific attention of a child who understands that something important is happening and who is waiting to know how it is going to resolve. I had looked at him and I had thought, he is watching how this is handled. What I do in the next 30 seconds is something he will carry. I had said, I don't think giving my children Christmas morning in their own house is selfish. I think it's what parents are supposed to do. I had picked up my fork. I had returned to dessert. My mother-in-law had refilled her wine glass. The dinner had continued. I want to say something about the conversation I had with my mother in January and about how it had gone differently than I had expected. I had called her on a Tuesday morning when the kids were at school and Derek was at work. I had said, Mom, I want to talk about Christmas. She had said, I thought we might. I had said, I want you to understand why I did what I did, and I want to understand why you did what you did, so we can figure out what the next 8 years look like. She had been quiet for a moment. Then she had said something I had not expected. She had said, I know the Christmas mornings have been for me. I have known it for a few years. I didn't know how to change it. I had been quiet. She had said, when you were little, Christmas morning was the most important thing. I wanted to keep having it. I didn't want it to be over. I had understood, in the way you understand things when the person who has been difficult suddenly becomes comprehensible, that what my mother had been doing for 8 years had not been about control or selfishness in the simple sense. It had been about grief for a version of Christmas that had ended when I had grown up and had children of my own and had become the adult in my own house. She had been trying to hold on to something. She had not known how to ask for it directly. She had planned it instead of asking for it. I had said, Mom, you can still have Christmas with us. You just don't have to have Christmas morning. Come in the afternoon. Stay for dinner. Come on the 26th. There are many days. Christmas morning belongs to my kids now. She had been quiet for a longer moment. She had said, You're right. I know you're right. I had said, I know. And I love you. And I want the next 8 years to be better than the last 8. She had said, I want that too. I want to say something about my son watching me at the dinner table, and about what I believe he had carried from that 30 seconds. Children learn from watching adults handle the moments that are difficult. They learn whether the difficult moment can be named without the room falling apart. They learn whether it is possible to say the true thing, and then pick up your fork and return to dessert. My son had watched me do this. He had been 8 years old. He had watched his mother say the true thing quietly, without cruelty, and then return to the meal. I do not know what he will do with this memory. I know he has it. I know that children carry the memories of the moments their parents navigate the difficult things, and that the carrying shapes them. I am shaped by the memories of my own mother navigating difficult things. I hope he is shaped by that 30 seconds in a way that serves him. I believe he will be.